Good morning. It's still morning. Okay, it's pretty foggy here. But I'd like to know my audience before I kick off with my slides. How many of you are from early day startups? Okay. How many of you are like, I'm working for a company, like, I know, established company, makes revenue and profit. Okay, good, lovely. Because Pipedrive is also exactly this type of company. So I hope that my story will land. And then in a Q&A corner, we can share some experiences also. So what I'm going to talk about is that I really enjoyed the previous presenter, Dima, who told about the tough role of engineering managers. And I do agree, that's probably one of the toughest jobs in tech industry at all. In Pipedrive, we take like really seriously everything related to people and culture. So our great belief is that happy engineer builds happy software, and happy software makes customers happy, and then those happy customers help company to achieve the happy revenue. So the endless happy cycle. But how we're doing that, how we are going through the different phases of innovation, how we adapt the new technologies. Let me go a bit more into that. So what the Pipedrive is. Pipedrive is an Estonian-founded unicorn. We were established at 2010. People from Ukraine, you might know Lift 99 or Ragnar Sass personally, maybe even some of you know. Ragnar was one of the Pipedrive founders. So we founded 2010. We became unicorn 2020. Then we got acquired by US-based uber large VC company, Vista Equity Partners. So now we are part of the Vista portfolio companies. We have been with them for 5 years. The first years, obviously, for Pipedrive were pretty tough, like every startups. And then at one moment you see the curve started to grow. And since then, we've always made money, not lost money. We also keep growing in double digit so far. Half of us still in Estonia, another half is distributed mostly in Europe, but some of us are also working in the US. But to try to frame where the Pipedrive today is, like 15 years old company, we still try to move fast, and we kind of move fast, but then again, like being part of the VC portfolio, being already 15 years old, being slightly also trapped by yourself being successful previously, you should think about us a bit like a train. We are so proud of our history, how we've been building the software, how we've been creating the company, have made us to reach to the levels where we are. So we kind of know that we were successful, and we also know that repeating the history does not build the future, but then you love your history. So it's kind of the railway system. The tracks are going. But things are happening in a world. I took not quite random, but a bit set of random pictures from different technology disruptions that we've seen like quite lately. It's not like thousands years away. Maybe the easiest ones are the middle one pictures about horses and cars. I haven't been Googling it or searching by myself, but one of my colleagues did it for me and said that at a time when horses were really popular, Then there were like big companies growing horses, selling horses, taking care of horses. And then when cars became a new technology standard, then arguably one of those previous companies who were good and leading the horse industry once, just one of those companies somehow managed to change and switch their business into the automotive industry. So you need to recognize those pivotal changes in technology, and then to challenge yourself also that is it now the time when you need to focus on making horses run faster, or is it now time to start learning the new technology? And obviously, why all those buzzwords here is that you need to constantly leave a room for innovation. It's easy to say, all the companies are saying probably that we want to innovate, and we hire only like people who are willing to build new things and who are ready to go beyond any box lines. But it's not so easy. Like you can't just say that be innovative or do innovation. You need to build your organization in a way so that that innovation can happen. You might have like smart people with smart ideas, but if you do not have a system how to channel it into your product and into your service, then those are just ideas. Smarter people than me have said that you can buy a box of good ideas for a penny. The real value is in execution, and execution happens only if you organize it, if you build your organization for that. And now coming to the buzzword, which is like everybody are talking about AI. For me, it's just yet another technology. Though it seems that this is a technology that is about to change every job and at every industry globally. So thus I started from horses and cars. Like most of those horses companies didn't realize that world has changed forever. The jobs remain same, like you had a jockey or the horse driver, and now you have the car driver. Just you can move now way more goods with one driver, way faster. So the industry changed completely, and I think that AI is something that will change in the same way every job at every industry. And why I created this slide is that, but this time, like with cars, it was easy, kinda. Like start using, drive carefully, start making your new logistical plans. It wasn't too complicated to start using. With AI, I think it's slightly more complicated. Like it's a high risk that you can lose everything. Like if you keep ignoring the AI, then you will be out of the market. I know, will it take 12 months? Will it take like 36 months? But by that time, you're definitely out of the competition if you are not introducing this technology into whatever you're doing. But it's even a bigger risk to burn all your money, to waste all your customers, and to disturb entire product if you're just trying to put this technology everywhere. Like you shouldn't be using it for the sake of using it. In Pipedrive, we were at first really slow. ChatGPT launched November 22, so 3 years ago, quite exactly. And then we were like just like crossing our fingers. I graduated university like something 30 years ago. And my thesis was at that time about machine learning. which was purely done on paper because the compute was so terribly expensive that there was no way to go and actually do any proper machine learning, at least in Estonia at that time when I graduated. So the core essence of the technology has been here for tens of years. Now we just got democratized. It got accessible and available for everyone. And at first we were like also just observing, and we were definitely those horse farmers thinking that that goes over. And then at one moment we started to realize that no, that's not actually it. And then we decided that okay, we need to take a chance. And we need to start utilizing those new opportunities. And then it wasn't so much about like our engineers or our R&D people like willing to learn. They were eager to learn, and on their private time they were experimenting all of those early days models and tools already. But when we started to use it as a company, then we realized pretty quickly actually, like if you are an established company and you are going to introduce the new technology, then you need to rush smartly. And our biggest challenge, at least, I know how about your companies, like how easy it is to onboard new technologies, new providers to your tech stack. For us, it was really painful when we went to our legal team and compliance and risk teams, and we said that, hey, we want to start using some new technology, and we are throwing all our customer data there, and we will start discussing really personal stuff with this new technology. Which you, their legal and compliance, have never seen and never used. That, of course, like it was absolute ban. So we had to take like few steps back to build a mechanism how we can really accept those risks, to know those risks, and then to decide which risk to accept. The payment systems and then the contractual system at first was really complicated, and in some cases it still is. Are you using Lovable? Is it like personal use? Is it a company use? I just yesterday had a call with their onboarding leaders, and they told to me that by now they have made 65 enterprise agreements, and all of those sorted one by one. That's how diverse the legal understanding and the risk understanding of this world still is. So you really need to take time and spend a lot of effort to realize entirely that what are the risks attached. And the Lovable guys, they work with Microsoft and Uber, but they work also with smaller startups and with smaller companies. So the industry does not exist yet there. Of course, big players will push their terms at you, but if you really go through those terms, it's complicated. It's a complicated word, and you need to take time to protect your business. For now, I think nothing bad yet has happened, but it's only a matter of time until the first risks will realize. So, as I said, innovation doesn't fail because of lack of ideas. It tends to fail because lack of the room to explore new technologies and new opportunities. And when we realized that we can't ignore the technology, but we also realized that, wow, that brings in way more new risks than we anticipated at first. Then we really went into the deep planning and thinking mode that, okay, but how we can how we can fit those two puzzles, like huge risk and technology you can't ignore. And we started to call it Tiger Team approach. I don't know, from somewhere the name just came. And what does that mean? Also to help our risk and compliance teams to onboard, and we started to identify small, very restricted, very specific areas where we want to play with the tool. So we introduced not like the full-scale onboarding to be used with the entire customer base data, with all the private information that we have about our customers in our systems, but to cut it into the smaller chunks, so that a small focus team or the very focused or the time-boxed period can sort out and experiment to answer one hypothesis. So that's the approach that we took to test out different LLMs, to test out different tools, and also to start building our own, like mostly RAG models. When we think that I discussed, so and how we build it up. Again, like if you enable, if you want to enable your teams and your people to learn the new technology, and if this is so fascinating technology as an AI, then all your people will start running the different directions, which means that a lot of happens, but a little learning comes out of that. So that's why we also created a very structured way for those different Tiger teams. We had about like 20 of them during the first month, but we established also like really easy setup system and then templates. So it was pretty much a few Claude Code commands to create your experimental environment, which then got merged with other experiments. So to make the learning from the previous projects accessible to the future projects, and to also to build a bit of like a competition into the system. Like we started actually to measure the learnings. It wasn't ever like a question that like, can we use this tool? It was rather like there is an assumption why a certain tool or certain model could be good for our business. And then we rewarded people coming out from those experimental tracks with a list of learnings. If you identified more new things, then that was the true win of those experimentations. Not like just answering questions like yes or no. Yes, let's use this tool. No, let's not use this tool. And I'm giving you also like a free samples of certain experiments that we were running. The world around R&D roles gets blurred. Like the borderlines between engineering, between design, between product leadership, between analytics, it starts like, it's not disappearing. You have like your deep knowledge, but then again, like different roles can take over the other roles' tasks. Like everyone can today mock up something, like take a Lovable. You will just use the tool to build your first MVP, then you will pass it over to your engineering team to build it as a production grade solution. But then Then at one moment we discovered that we are really experimenting with way too many tools. So we defined our challenge, like design to code takes too long. We selected 5 tools to test and prototype, and then we figured out a clear winner, which now is our established tool, the Figma Make. Then if you are 15 years old, we have 1,600 code repositories. We have over 700 microservices. We are using a lot of different libraries and services to keep that up to date. Is pretty boring. And it's time consuming. So we had a challenge. Can we make that way more automated? While with Figma Make, we discovered that selecting the right tool and giving a proper training, most of you people really can start learning it and using it. Then here we actually understood that in such a complex technical architecture with very basic prompts, you can prepare your workspace. But the final fine-tuning still needs to be done manually. So we hoped that we can fully automate this task, but we ended up with a planning automated, but delivery actually is still carried by engineers. So if with the first task we achieved way more than we actually expected, then with the second task where we were anticipating, oh, that should be easy. It wasn't so easy at all. And the third task, our observability team, which is a pretty small team, do a really good job. The entire engineering is about 300 people. Our observability is 4 people. They take care of the observability platform, also the alerting system. And then they got also quite annoyed at one moment that the different engineering teams are asking sometimes weird and sometimes weird questions. So the call was that, okay, but can we set up and define the platform in a way so that pretty much everyone can establish by themselves their alerting system to know how the features they build are actually operating, and that was a massive success. Now the observability team truly runs only the platform side, while every team, completely independent, is to set up their own alerting, what they need, it was an initiative we started so that, okay, we lost first 2 years of this AI race, and then we discovered that it's pretty complicated task to bring new technology in-house. And we just wanted to have a framework so that we are not missing the train, and we pushed hard at first. And then during the first month of this initiative, we got 20 parallel experiments done, which now has been growing 80 plus. We started in August, now it's early December. So we onboarded this way of thinking and this way of working across the organization. So also our customer support teams and our account management teams, they're experimenting with different tools under the same framework. And the main learning from there is that you need to create a room where people can feel safe to play. And okay, I've lost one slide. Maybe it comes up later. Yeah, that's the slide. That ends, right slide ended up in a wrong place. Our main learning was that if you build new things, if you experiment new technologies, then that's probably true everywhere. But specifically now we learned that the greatest success of those experiments is making mistakes. Because the mistake is an only thing you can learn from. You don't much learn from your success, but you rather learn only from the mistakes if you are doing. We introduced a new element also to our postmortems. The question we added there is that, okay, where did we got lucky? Usually you use the postmortems to go through your situations like just describing, okay, this was the task, we did that, what we learned from here. But again, like running those quick and fast experiments on a large scale, we learned that in really many places we actually got lucky. And that was important to discover as well, because then we started to think where the luck comes from, and every single time it turned back again like to this well-established, clearly defined process and workflows where people felt safe enough inside the system so that they were really appreciating making mistakes. And then at one moment we started to see that some people are moving way faster, are braver to make mistakes. And we are using a tool called TX. It's something that helps you to understand your engineering team productivity. And the approach that we are taking there is, yes, the tool is connected and also to our Jira and to our GitHub and all those technical tools, but way more interesting for us is actually the sentiment analytics. So we keep going back to all engineers every quarter, like asking for the challenges they have in their job, like what limits you most, what enables you most, where should we put focus when changing our way of working or improving our tooling. And when we started our journey with this new AI technology, then the assumption is that should kind of help you to move faster. But the fast is not something that you can measure by time spent on Jira tickets or anything like that. But we rather started to ask the question from engineers that, hey, you are using those new tools now, you are working by upgraded process agreements, so how you feel? And before starting to run those focus Tiger team events, we had 38% of our engineers telling that thanks to those tools, they are saving at least an hour or more every week. And then now in mid-autumn, when we had another metrics, then 88% of engineers said that they are gaining extra time out of updated processes and tooling. And on a time-wise, they reported a growth from 1.5 hours to 3 hours and 38 minutes, very precise. That's an average number, but you can put it into the gained man hours all in all. For us, it means that thanks for introducing this experimentations framework, letting people safely to work with their experiment, to make mistakes, to share the learnings out of the mistakes. As a company, just through introducing this small piece of new workflow enabled us to save one entire engineering team, which actually converts that we have extra team, we can work faster, we can deliver more. So this pretty remarkable. Then we started to look at also into the more details, like heavy and moderate users. Their throughput got improved significantly with those who were the lower non-users. And it's also got pretty visible that if those people who ignored the new way of working and new tooling started to use it at least a bit, also their throughput went up significantly. So like setting the frames for learning, for experimenting new tooling, actually got us to better throughput across the entire cohort. And those like heavy and moderate users, like in old world, you used to have junior engineers, mid engineers, seniors, principals. I think that the complexity of job still is there, but those terms are really switching from like, there are like people who learn using new processes and new tools, and those people who keep ignoring or relying on those things less. So it's you can call it seniority, but that's not exactly that. So like how you also like calibrate and measure your teams, that also changes quite heavily. Start early, iterate fast. AI maturity grows only if you keep doing things. Like I showed, like when we started, we have like really low gain. All our people were kind of experimenting with those new tools, but as we didn't have at first any system related to the new technology, then we gained very little. Create safe space for innovation. Exactly this Tiger teams. Upskill continuously. What we learned also that if you create, however, shared repository for learnings, then that's the good beginning. But talking through things and experimenting things together during the hackathons, during different workshops, works way better. So now we have our internal training programs, which our engineering excellence team constantly keeps updating and runs the next version and the next version. Make AI part of the culture. So it's pretty much like if anyone leaves the Pipedrive and the manager will come and ask for the backfill, then the first question always that comes back is that why AI can't do that, or why the newly available tooling can't help you out. So why you need exactly the same role that left? Maybe you should like rethink the expectations to the backfilled role. Measure impact and celebrate learnings from us as a business company. Of course, we measure the business impact, but we celebrate mostly learnings, which means that we celebrate failures. And I think that this is no news. Like, but this year helped us to relearn that you only can learn from mistakes. And happiness isn't a perk. It's a breakthrough behind the desk stack. Exactly what we've seen also from this DX reporting tool that we are using. That really the happy engineers and those teams who reported higher feelings or better feelings towards their tooling and towards their way of working, delivering and achieving way better results. You're more than welcome to search our engineering blog in Medium. We have published also in GitHub all those technical materials around how we run the DX, how we drive the engineering engagement through those sentiment analytics, mostly not from technical details. We don't measure the line of codes or anything like that. It's purely focused on what makes people to move faster, how to remove those mostly emotional or organizational blockers from them. And that's why I started with thanking Dima for the previous presentation, that this engineering manager's job is probably the most difficult and also the most rewarding job that anyone can have in tech industry. If you will learn how to empower and enable the craziness every engineer in your company has internally, and if you will define and set up the process so that they can safely go crazy every day, then that rewards well for entire company. In our case, just over the few months, without replacing people, without doing anything crazy, we just found one extra engineering team. In our case, which just one like this, 15 full engineers, just organizing our work slightly more productively and switching focus from meeting deadlines to making mistakes. Thank you.